In this direct answers video, we're going to discuss how to avoid common mistakes that people make with their LLCs. And this is really important because if you make them and you get sued, you very well could lose everything. However, there are a few things that you can do to properly protect your LLC. And these things are things that we call the corporate formalities. And if you follow the corporate formalities, it ensures that there's a sufficient separation between you as an individual and your business. And the benefit here is that if you follow these formalities, it could help you avoid piercing the corporate veil whereby you're held individually liable after your business gets sued. But to ensure that that corporate veil does not get pierced, the courts look at what we call the corporate formalities. Now, there are a bunch of formalities out there, so to make it easier for you to understand them, I'm going to put these formalities into groupings and walk through each one. And the first grouping relates to banking. The first formality here is making sure that you maintain separate bank accounts. You have one bank account for your personal use and another bank account for your business uses. And you're going to want to make sure that there's a separation between the two and that they're used for different purposes. When you set up your LLC or other entity, it's important that you get an EIN number from the IRS. And with that EIN number, you can take it to the bank to set up a bank account for your business. The next formality is making sure that your business is adequately capitalized. And this is really important, because you're going to want to make sure that your business is able to cover all of its expenses. The third formality is not commingling funds between your personal account and your business account. If you use your personal account to pay off debts of the business and vice versa, it's much easier for the court to pierce the corporate veil to go after your individual assets. The next formality is making sure that your business is making proper distributions. When people own a business, they're able to make distributions to the owners of the business. But when you do so, you're going to want to make sure that they're made in good faith and that all the other members and managers of the business approve of it. This is not the case when people take money out of the business to cover a personal debt or even when they embezzle money. Now, the next grouping of formalities relates to paperwork. And the first formality here is making sure that your business has an operating agreement or bylaws. Now, these documents are really important because they're the roadmap for how your business operates. And when things go south with the business or between the business partners, this document will govern what happens in that situation. And if you don't have an operating agreement or bylaws, then the state's default rules will apply. And they may not be good depending on your situation. But if you have an operating agreement or bylaws in place, you can avoid that situation. Another formality is issuing stock or membership certificates. And the benefit here is that in some situations, it may be helpful to have a physical document that shows your ownership interest in a company. And the last formality here is maintaining separate records for your business and your personal uses. Some examples of business records that should be kept separate are bank statements and tax documents. And obviously, it's really good to have these things on hand. The next grouping of formalities relates to government. And the first formality here is making sure that your entity is properly set up with the Secretary of State. If your entity is either delinquent or in bad standing with the Secretary of State, it's much easier for the court to pierce the corporate veil to hold you individually liable. And another formality is making sure that you're properly performing your CTA filings with FinCEN. Because if you don't do this, you could face a $10,000 fine or up to 2 years in jail. And on top of that, it very well could be easy for the court to pierce the corporate veil in that situation. The next formality is making sure that you're maintaining your annual filings and that your LLC is in good standing with the Secretary of State. Another formality here is having a registered agent address to send government mail to. Now, this is really important because that registered agent address is listed on the Secretary of State's website. And if you list your personal address in that situation, well, then it would be available to the public. And on top of this, having a registered agent address is really good because in the event your business is sued, that registered agent will accept service of process, and then they'll turn around and immediately notify you of the lawsuit. And the last formality here is making sure that you're complying with other regulations. Depending on the type of business that you operate, you may need to be in compliance with federal, state, and local regulations. And if you are, it's much less likely that the court will pierce the corporate veil to hold you individually liable. The next grouping of formalities relates to taxes. And obviously, one formality here is making sure that your business is paying taxes, because the last thing you want to be is in bad standing with the IRS. And the next formality is making sure that you're filing separate tax returns for your business and your individual self. Now, I must mention here that if your business is a disregarded entity, then this wouldn't apply. But ultimately, this just depends on the type of business and how the business is taxed. But it definitely is good practice to make sure that you're properly filing your tax returns. The next grouping of formalities relates to corporate notice. And the first formality here is holding out your company as a separate business, separate and apart from you as an individual. Examples of these can be having your business name on your business card, or when you sign contracts, making sure that you're signing off as the manager of that business instead of signing off as you as an individual. Now, this is actually a lot more important than you think. If you sign a contract and the LLC's name is not on there, then you as an individual will be personally liable if anything bad happens on that contract. So it's really important that you hold yourself out as the manager of a business. And as I already mentioned, the next formality is holding yourself out as the manager of the business. Because if you do this and your business gets sued, it's going to be much more difficult for the court to pierce the corporate veil to hold you individually liable. The next grouping of formalities relates to meetings. And the first one is making sure that you're conducting annual meetings for your business. Now, these meetings can be annually, they can be monthly, or they can be any other time frame. But just as long as you have them, it shows that your business is separate and apart from you as an individual. And on top of that, the next formality is making sure that you have minutes of those meetings. And these are important because the minutes show what was discussed at the meeting, as well as any actions that the members approved at the meeting. And the next grouping of formalities is just what I call other. And the first one here is that there's no evidence of fraud or injustice. Now, what no fraud or injustice means is that the business is acting in good faith and it's operating as a legitimate business. And examples of fraud or injustice can be transferring assets out of the LLC into your individual name for nefarious purposes. And another example can be transferring assets from your individual name into the LLC to shield those assets from creditors. So pretty much, as long as you're acting in good faith, there will be no fraud or injustice. And the last formality here is selling interest with proper approval. So when you transfer assets in and out of the company, you're going to want to make sure that the other members of the business approve of those transactions. Now, you may be thinking, there's a lot of formalities here that I need to follow. There certainly are a lot of formalities, but you may not need to follow all of them depending on the situation. But if you follow enough of them, that corporate veil is going to be very strong, and the likelihood of that corporate veil being pierced, whereby you as an individual are held personally liable for the business's assets, that risk goes significantly down. Now, if you follow enough of the formalities, the likelihood of the corporate veil being pierced is much lower. I also have a new book called The 5 Tricks to Teach Your Kids About Money. You can download the book for free by clicking the link in the description below. If you're looking to start a business, you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with us at Corporate Direct by also clicking the link in the description below. And as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and turn on that notification bell. And I should warn you, the contents of this video are not legal advice and no attorney-client relationship has been formed.